Hello and welcome back to another Procreate tutorial where today I'm going to show you how you can create Turtle Island. We're going to go ahead and create all of the different elements, all with the built-in brushes. You won't need anything else other than the palette and the canvas size. And they're all available over on the post over on Patreon, which you can use the link in the description down below to go and grab. And if you want even more tutorials from me, you can come and join me over on Patreon because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters. And the catalogue sits at over 150 exclusive tutorials at the time of recording. So with all that said, enjoy today's tutorial and let's get started. So once you create your canvas, the first thing we're going to want to go ahead and do is go up to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab the color at the top of the second column. Brush, you probably want to set it to like the monoline brush, or if you're happy to press a little bit firmer, you can use the soft brush. So calligraphy in monoline or airbrushing in soft brush. Size just wants to be fairly small, like a 2%. We want to go up to our actions. We want to go ahead and add a drawing guide under the canvas tab and edit that drawing guide. We will add this symmetry option, and the option wants to be set to vertical, and you can hit the option of done. And then in the center of your screen, you want to create an ellipse shape. So it will reflect on both sides, which is perfectly fine. Just draw an ellipse like so and pop one finger on the screen if it snaps to an ellipse. If it doesn't, like mine, just manually kind of line it up really, like a little something like this. Drag and drop the color in. If you can hold and drag to the right, you might be able to spill out into any gaps, but this is what we want to create. Now, we've got the symmetry in play because we want to make sure that, first of all, the layer, if you tap on it and add the drawing assist, you've got a little checkbox here. If you go up to your actions and you go to liquify, take a look at my settings across the bottom here, match up accordingly, and you want the option here of push. We're just going to create that kind of turtle shell shape. Now, size-wise, that will fluctuate, to be honest with you, but you want to just kind of flatten the top down a little bit, and we want to start to kind of just push it in at the top as well a little bit. So a little something like this. It's not like a perfect like ellipse in any way. Likewise, the bottom as well. So I'll go back up to like 54%, and I'll just kind of push in the bottom here, kind of creating a bit more of a point to the bottom. You could even widen it if you want to as well. It's totally up to you. Something roughly along these kind of lines is good. You can sit here and honestly tweak it and push it and create everything that you want from the shell to make it exactly how you want it. I think the only thing I would probably do is maybe just kind of with a small brush size, like let's go smaller than that. Let's go like a 27. Just maybe push up the top like so, and then maybe just kind of create very minimal amounts of kind of push. Don't worry too much about sort of making the shell perfect because it's going to get lost shortly anyway. So something roughly like this is what you want to go for. A little bit of a push in here, a slower sort of swoop down into a point, and a bit of a flatter top on there. And there you go, you've got your shell. What we then want to do is go ahead and grab your cursor, just move it down for a second, then go to your layer and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Grab either one of them, just grab your cursor, flip it vertically and drag it up, and use uniform just to scale it down in size, and you can use this to create the head as well. Now the head itself probably might need a little bit of tweaking, but something, again, roughly, again, this is meant to be an island at the same time. We're going to scale this down in size. You can put it like there pretty much and tap on your cursor when you're done. And if you want to, because the layer is also assisted, you could just kind of widen up the neck a little bit and kind of connect them in a little something like this. From there, you want to go ahead and create another new layer. Don't worry about adding a drawing assist to this one. And again, feel free to switch the brush if you prefer the monoline brush. I want you to create kind of like a fin shape over here. So it's going to start up here, going to go up into a point, come down, and then kind of blade out from there. It gets really big and then it gets really small very quickly. And I've just looped it round so I can drag and drop my color in. So it does this sort of shape. Then go to your layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Grab your cursor, flip it horizontal. Now make sure you do rotate it. I don't want this to be perfect in any way, both sides. We don't want any kind of perfection from this at all. The only thing you want to make sure you do is just stay within the boundary of your canvas. So rotate it a little bit, either way, and tap on your cursor when you're done. Now this is, of course, is getting a little bit big, so we'll swipe from left to right on everything. Grab your cursor and just use uniform, grab the bottom middle node and just scale it down a little bit so we can draw in some fins at the bottom as well. So again, we'll just tap away, create a new layer, and then we want to go ahead and create a fin, or like a foot almost shape here. So that's going to be like a bit of a straight line. It's going to kind of round off a little bit, kind of create this kind of shape here, and then drag and drop your color in. Now, potentially I might need to hold down on my eraser there and just kind of refine that. So by holding down on the eraser, I've changed my brush to the soft airbrush, and then I can just kind of just create like a better kind of shape down here. Just a little something like this. Then when you're happy, go ahead and swipe that to the left and duplicate it. Grab your cursor and again, rotate it, but also flip it horizontal, of course, and then pop that into position just over towards the right-hand side a little bit. And the only other thing you might want to do is go back to the main body shape and just create the tiniest little bit of a tail. So you want to go back to your brush and just create like a little kind of triangle kind of shape at the bottom there. Just a little something like that. Now you don't need to do that necessarily. To be honest with you, I'm going to keep mine minimal and not do it because it's going to get lost, and it's meant to be an island that resembles a turtle. Now from there, you want to go ahead and pinch all of these layers together. So you want to make sure you're happy with your turtle at this point. What I recommend you do is swipe this to the left and duplicate it and turn off the top one, for example, and grab the bottom one. Grab your cursor and go ahead and use the option of distort. And we might want to rotate it slightly. We might want to squish the top down, bring in this top left node. We're trying to create some perspective of this sort of island here. You can widen it up, you can flatten it, and you can just keep adjusting it until you find like an angle like this. This is pretty much marrying up perfectly to my pre-practices of this, where you want to make sure you are being a bit sacrificial almost to the shape of it and making sure that the distant elements are, you know, genuinely a bit scaled down in size. And likewise, you might want to widen up the bottom. So you've got the head up there. Now, alternatively, this is up to you. You could flip that vertically and do the opposite. So for example, you could have the head at the bottom wider and the legs towards the top. I prefer it like this. So just marry up accordingly. And there we will have our sort of base shape in order to start coloring in. So let's grab our cursor. Let's just first of all move this towards the center of our canvas a little bit more, and then tap on our cursor when we're done. From there, we then want to go ahead and you created a backup earlier. If you're completely happy or you want to save this layer just in case, it's totally up to you. I would then swipe that to the left and delete it. So let's now go ahead and set our background color. We want to go ahead and grab this color top left of the palette and hit done. You then want to go ahead and create a new layer in front of your turtle. Go ahead and go to your colors and grab the color here, top of the, top of the 6th column. We want to change our brush now to the one of choice for today, which is going to be the painting option of the jagged brush. Now, this brush, I've put a setting there of 47%. And again, if I swipe that to the left, you can see it's completely reset because it's grayed out. There is a marker here of 8%, although that's fairly large for what we're about to do. That needs to be a lot smaller, probably around about 2%. And I want you now to start drawing in your beaches that sit around the edge of your turtle. So you can go ahead now and just sort of draw it in. You've got a very low opacity. Bear in mind, we're looking at this not from a completely top down. We're looking at it from like a diagonal angle. We're looking at it like this approach. We're going down towards it. So we want to go ahead and add sort of this edge here, sort of towards the bottom, but also remembering that there might be something that spills over towards the top, and that's fine. Now in here, you want to try your best, to be honest with you, to keep a good amount of the shape of the turtle where possible. But like in the gaps here, if this was just an island, you'd imagine that the beaches would kind of curve round into those almost armpit-like areas. And then you can drag the beach down the body, go over the edge of your turtle, but try not to go into it too much. And then a little bit down here. Vary up sort of the curves and the density, and you know, it can have a little bit of a kind of spill out here and there. I urge you, to be honest with you, just at the beginning, just to try and get the kind of basics in. And then you can also go ahead and do something really fun where, you know, we wrap sort of the beach around the bottom there, the bottom of the shell, and then we go round, and then we can kind of like drag out the beach a little bit as well. Like it doesn't have to necessarily sit super tight the whole time, you know. Again, it's meant to be an island that resembles a turtle. So you can like drag that beach out a little bit more down there. You could create like a lovely big kind of sort of big beach down here at the bottom. Now our light source is always going to be coming from that left-hand side. So we do need to bear that in mind, that in a minute when we move into our highlights, and you may even want to bear it in mind now so that you can add beach where you want it, the left-hand side areas over here are going to be the brightest. So I, for example, can get a little bit more color in here I'm going to bring the brush size down to like a 1% because I want to show that there is beach just beyond the brow of this bit, because all the dark land, don't forget, is still part of like your island. It's the jungle. So in a minute, when we add in our trees, you kind of want to maybe just have a nod to the fact that there is even more beach on the opposite side over here. So we're just drawing this in, and it's meant to have a painterly feel to it. It's meant to have that kind of streaky nature to it. I love it. I find it really unforgiving. Well, forgiving, should I say, is the right word. I find it really forgiving to just enjoy a painting experience, because, you know, the brush strokes don't need to be exactly precise. You know, we've done tutorials, and I've done an island tutorial on Patreon, for example, where we've used the rainforest brush and we've added in really fine levels of, you know, greenery and trees, etc. By the way, I'm just going to go up to a 2% again. And, you know, yes, that looks fantastic. It looks amazingly detailed, but it's always nice to vary up the style of a piece, you know, and because the concept is fairly similar, I've given you a slightly different approach to it today, where we've got like a painter look to it, which, again, it might be something that then you fall in love with and say, actually, that's how I want my pieces to be now going forward only. So I'm just going to colour this in here, little wrap around, little bit of there at the top. Now, this isn't your be all and end all of your the beach areas, so don't stress over it too much. So we can just make sure we get some in, and then just on the edges of the beach, just very lightly, because we're at a low percentage, you can see me just giving a little wobble and wiggle all the way kind of down the beach there to almost create like a soft edge to it, just to kind of blend it into what will be the ocean, and just making sure it's a little bit more solid here. But again, this isn't my final potential like look, and that's fine. We can also go ahead and do something where we maybe just introduce like a wiggle and a patch of like additional level of beach here inside the kind of the cove area here. So there's like an extra little sort of patch of sand there. Perhaps there's like another little one as well down here. It's like on its own. You can bring the brush size down and vary up then the sort of style of it. You can introduce like a much smaller one just beside it. You may need to press a few times. Your hand may get a little bit crampy today based off today's design, but yeah, it's just part of the style and aesthetic. I'm just going to sort of feather out that area here because that one's a bit visible with a lot of brush strokes. Now I may even sort of wrap around another wider beach area there at the bottom. Now let's go ahead, and once you've sort of given yourself that first coating, we're going to go ahead and just add some color to the background. So I'm going to create a new layer and drag it all the way to the bottom. I'm going to set the blend mode of this from normal to multiply, and I'm going to go to the same color as the background, top left of the palette. I'm going to make the brush size a little bit sort of bigger. What size we got there? 14%. And I'm just going to sort of streak across very, 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 very lightly towards like the edges of the screen to just add in variety in patchiness of color. Around our island, we want it to be like nice and colorful and bright, but you want kind of the outside edges to have a little bit of almost like a vignette to it, but also just darker. And the streaks that you enter here, if you bring it down to like a 3%, you might be able to just streak in some lines here and there very, very lightly. You can see how light it is on camera. They'll just like add in sort of the concept of waves perhaps, but keeping it really, really simple. You could add in a bit more, you know, in random places off to the edge. I urge you to honestly come back to this because there's a few things that kind of build up to make today's design, and one of which is like the lighter colors that we'll introduce as well. So you can bring in some dark tone like right in the edges, right up here, but again, you can always come back to it. Let's then also kind of do a similar concept by creating a new layer. Go to your colors, grab the middle of the first column, and just ever so slightly with like a, we could probably go to my marker there of 8%. Just a few, let's go a bit smaller, sorry. Let's go down to 4%. Just a few light patches then in between them as well, just to kind of vary it up. Just keep it light, don't overdo it for now, because this is, we're about to move into the kind of tropical colors in just a second. This is just meant to kind of break up the brightness, sorry, the darkness, should I say, of the tone that we just created, and just add in variety in color. So a couple of wiggles, couple of squiggles here and there just to break that edge up. It's just like a little bit of an additional frame. Now I am going to create a separate layer, so a new layer, and then I'm going to go ahead and start adding in that lovely bright tropical color So about 3% on the brush size. I'm going to wiggle my way around the edges here of the land that we just created and create that lovely blend out. So look at that. I'm just going to keep going, blending that out, creating a really nice light tone that blends quite a distance away from the ocean, the sand, into the ocean. And you create that lovely tropical aesthetic. So honestly, multiple layers on top of each other will look good. And you are looking to have a really nice, vibrant tone very close to the edge of the land, but it blends out into the darkest tone of the big body of water. So I'm just going to wiggle my pen down there and then like wiggle it around this little island here that we created as well, so that it's got like a general bit of like light tone around it. And then you keep building it up. Now at the minute, the sand is its darkest possible variation. We've not yet added in like the highlight to sit on top of this. So at the minute, it may start to look to you like the sand is not the correct tone, or it doesn't quite fit, or nothing's marrying up yet. That's just, again, simply because we've not got to that point yet. In a minute, when we start to brighten up the sand and the light source, etc., you'll see it all really come together. So this bright tone here, again, is going to look really bright. And I want to make sure this edge of this like little extra bit of sand here we layered in will look really nice and bright. Reduce the brush size down just a smidge to like a 2% and go down the edge here. Little wiggle along there too. It's looking nice and bright. And because I've got a couple of elements very, very tight together here, I need to bear that in mind and not leave too many dark tones between them. And then just blend out as I get further away. So I'm just fluctuating between like a 2 and 3% here, just to create that lovely bright tone. And to be honest with you could make it a lot quicker than this. You just need to go all the way around and then just add it in. But I'm taking my time in a way because getting these angles right of the how the sand then gets really bright and then into that blue beautiful tone will look really good if you can take your time and just let them all kind of fade out, blend out, you know, expand into the ocean in the correct way. Like up there, that one's pretty much bang on perfect. I'm really happy with that. And that started off by giving myself like a little bit of an outline and then building up on top of that, pushing that out. You can go to the edge of the frame. It really doesn't matter. And just keep building up that island area here. Pushing that up and out. And then we'll come down the beach as well. So you're kind of making sure all the curves kind of flow in the same way. So you can let that beach here have some lovely blue tone to it as well. I'm going to make the brush size a bit bigger, like a 4%, and bring it down and blend it in. But I could sort of bring that out if I wanted to. Like here, I could just create like a bit of a curve that kind of makes its way out and in towards the ocean. And again, the primary thing to do is, as you're making your way around, is just, and it doesn't have to be a consistent level of color, but make sure that the edge of your island has some lovely bright tone to it right by where those beaches are. So that's going to look lovely. We're going to add some over the top as well. Just a few additional colors. Lovely. And let's blend that out over the top as well. As I said, we're looking at it from a particular angle where we might just about be able to see over the trees, but at the same time, the ocean, it doesn't really matter because we're going to end up in a minute with patches all over the place to show that there's much variation in the ground. So for example, with a 3% here, you know, I'm going to tap and push in a bit of color randomly throughout the edge here because it doesn't just completely sink off perfectly. If you add in lots of patches and scuffs, you can show that there's variety within there. So there's maybe a slightly higher bit of sand in that little spot there. So that's why it's a little bit brighter. You can patch this all in, all the way down. Keep just tapping away. That's all I'm doing is just tapping away, slowly building up some color. Adding this in, a little bit of color down here. I'm just going to make the brush size a bit bigger because I want to expand on here a little bit more. Lovely. Go down to that 2% again. Start getting in some patches in here. You can go really small if you want to, like a 1%, and get some more like detailed little points of interest in the sort of ocean area. We'll keep it broad just to start with, like a slightly larger 2 to 3%, and then patch that in and then get in there and refine afterwards. Neither is wrong. I sometimes like to sort of get the larger shapes in first And then once you've got the larger shapes in, you can just refine them if you want to. If you go too small, sometimes too quickly, it's quite hard to kind of broaden it out and make it a little bit bigger. Something like this looks really good. We'll bring that down to like a 2%, and you can patch in some slightly brighter spots in them. I wouldn't do too many throughout the whole thing, keep some of them a little bit more broad. General bit of kind of lighter tone. Don't forget to kind of blend them out as well if you can. So if you've done like a cluster like I've done here, I just need to make sure I blend that out so it gradually falls off to the deeper parts of the ocean. Maybe like a little ring there around the bottom will look nice. And I'm just going to triple check that just around those edges we've got a nice, again, bright outline to it. The outline over here is not quite as bright as I would like it, so I'm going to go down the edge of the beach there, blending that out as I go, blending it around that kind of armpit area, as I like to keep calling it. And there we go. And even if you have bold strokes in there, it's still going to look nice. Like it's still going to have that level of like depth to it. Now I'm only undoing it because I want to just stick it a little bit tighter to it and then patch in perhaps in a different style. Now this is not the only thing that we want to add to the ocean itself. We want to go ahead and create a new layer in front of these light lines. Go to your colors and go to the bottom of the same column, so bottom of the first column, same brush. You just want to sort of have that 2%, and you're patching in now variety in the ocean, where we're going to end up with some greens in here. And they're basically darker tones and hues and variations in that tropical area, because you don't just get the blues and teals, there's also greens and all sorts of variation in here. So I'm just tapping away in random locations, trying not to do too much, but just tapping away into certain little spots to create variety in green tones. A little bit up here too. Lovely. Little bit in behind this kind of splodge up here. A little bit further back as well. And again, that's not the only sort of color we add, because we're actually going to go ahead and create another new layer. Change the blend mode from normal to multiply. Same color, sorry. But this one will be a lot darker. And you can kind of focus this one a little bit further away. So like a 2 to 3%. You can just patch in random areas of like dark tone all throughout, and you can now see this whole landscape. And I know it's landscape and seascape, but you can see it all coming together. Don't be afraid to kind of get really close to some of your little tropical spots, because maybe there is just like dark grooves in between them. Like really falls off, gets really deep very quickly. But more towards the outside edges, you can just add in little patches of detail ultimately. Feather it out again, little scribbles, little wobbles here and there. And it should all start to come together, especially when you zoom all the way out. You get that generalized picture then. Let's then go ahead and go up to the top of our layers. So we had the beach tone. We're going to create a new layer in front of it. Go to your colors and grab the middle of the 6th column. Let's get that brush size around about, probably about 2%, because it needs to be smaller than the space you've allocated. And then you just want to go 2% again. You just want to wiggle your pen, and you want to leave like a dark edge here, but you can chuck the light tone way up towards the top, i.e. here I've left the darker at the bottom because that's where it connects into the ocean, and then I would brighten it up as it makes its way up towards the body of the landmass, i.e. our little turtle. Now don't forget, you want to have variety in here, so some slightly brighter tones here and there. We do have another tone to add in a second, and don't forget, you are not, you are going to be drawing on top of your turtle, so try not to run over the dark tone quite so much. So you can see now that bright tone is really starting to come together, because now we're bringing in the tones at a kind of similar level to the teal that we just added in for the ocean. So you can run your pen down your sand, and it can follow the flow. What I mean by that is you don't want your brush strokes to go kind of this way when the land is going this way. You kind of want your brush strokes to curve round. And again, you are not clipped, so I need to be a little bit more careful there. And I want to follow the curve of the land with my brush strokes to mimic it all the way down into here. And then when you get into a spot like this, you can then rotate the angle, so into this point on the end. I'll brighten that up. I can give a good amount of color to it. And don't forget, we're at quite a low opacity at this current point. So you can get back in terms of like take your pen off the screen, build up the color. Light source, don't forget, it's going to come from that left-hand side. but it should be quite high. So what you can do now is you want to kind of potentially factor in that maybe this like right edge over here is not going to get quite as much lighting. So you can kind of lay out the blueprints. We've got one more highlight tone to add in. So what we can do is we can add in the this tone here now, and that might be the final be all and end all of the lighting up in the right hand side edge. So a little bit more beach on that side. So here I might start to go, well, I'll add in one brush stroke and try my best to do it in one brush stroke, and then I can pick out in a second where I want to brighten up, if at all. Now we do have shadows that we're going to introduce along the edge of the land eventually, so we will be able to sort of tone it down later on. We're going to tuck some more beach and sand around the head, and you may need to lower your brush size in order to do so. Maybe a very skinny bit up there. You don't want it all to be the same level and consistency of like the amount that you've added in here. You know, you want to keep some distance and variation in here. Now you then want to go ahead and create another new layer. Go to your colors and grab the bottom of the same column, so bottom of the 6th column, and this is your brightest tone. So then you can work in the areas you want to brighten up the most. So I want to brighten up this area of the beach in the kind of central area of the white sand that we've created already. And I'm just blending it in, taking my time just to really brighten up this edge of the beach. It can come all the way down. I can leave some areas and then I can brighten it up into here. Maybe brighten up this top edge. If the sun's coming across, then I'd imagine then that this edge over here would be brighter than in that gap. So I'm going to basically jump over to here, add in a little bit here, and then you can pick and choose if you want to, like, does the light just about make it over towards this kind of lovely little bit of the fin? I think it would do. So I'm going to add in like a little bright spot on there as well. And we'll leave it like that. Maybe an occasional little sort of very minor amount of variety in there, but something like that is what we're going for. It's now time to add in all the trees. Now we're going to go ahead and again create another new layer. Go to your colors. We're going to grab the middle of the 2nd column. Your brush can vary in size, so I think around about 4 to 5%. It's still low opacity, and in fact that's probably too big. Let's go to about 3%. Now with a turtle shell, there is like this kind of outside kind of border here, and then inside is usually the shapes of the actual shell that is more of a pattern than that, but that's the general sort of idea. And then of course you've got the head and then down the fins. So we want to kind of allude to that kind of border a little bit, and then the larger sort of shapes within the center. So what we want to do is we kind of want to border and kind of outline our turtle. So what we're going to do is keep your brush size a bit smaller for the minute, like a 2%. Create like trees, just circular fluffy shapes, and I'm tapping a couple of times here and there, and make sure to leave gaps. Go a bit higher than your border of your turtle, that's perfectly fine. We're going to allude to that kind of idea, and then your trees want to get a bit bigger. So as you get towards the bottom, you want to make them a little bit larger. So I'm going to make this one a little bit larger here, which gives me kind of what's going to be my final scale in size of a tree. And then I can sort of make sure that as I get round the edge over here, they just start to fall off in size and get tinier as they make their way up towards the top. So I can make my brush size like a 2% if I wanted to. Create a much larger set of trees here, just kind of fluff them out a little bit more. And again, they're just circular shapes, that's all they are. Little bit here, a little bit there, and then from there I need to make my brush size a tiny bit smaller. As they start to fall off into the distance a little bit more, they will just nicely fall off in size, and make them really small as well. You don't have to make them like consistent in terms of like the fall off in size. Now again, light source is going to come from that left hand side, so you can start to sort of tap and just keep tapping away, punching in the green tone. And then let's do some trees on the fins as well. So based off of scale, you might not want to compete with these ones. They might be like really large trees because they're part of the body of our turtle. And don't be afraid to like leave big dark gaps. So I'm going to add in like a few squiggles here, and look at the general shapes of them. They're just like circular kind of squiggles. And then I'm going to leave like really dark tone in that gap because there's just no light getting to it. That's fine. Here, I'll do a similar kind of concept where let's bulk in like one big-ish kind of tree in this space here, and then I'll tap in a few little sort of smaller ones around the edge. Some of them can just literally be taps, and that's it, like a tap a couple of times with the brush head to create some smaller trees. Smaller trees in between the larger ones as well will look brilliant. So if you can do that as well, you've got the patience to do so, that's perfect. In fact, I could hold down on my eraser, get rid of like a few of these trees and actually implement that myself. So I could put like a small tree here, maybe a slightly larger one running off the edge, kind of wrapped around, but that little small one in between will look fantastic. Let's just keep repeating that, except as we get further away, of course, we want them to fall off a little bit. So about 2% brush size, a much smaller 2% now. I'm going to just get like the outline in and just keep tapping away a few times here and there just to create some trees on top of this dark mass, adding it in. So yeah, nice painterly feel to it today. I hope you're enjoying the style of it. I'm probably, sort of to give you a bit of insight, I'll probably refine my bright teal edge a little bit towards the latter stages, because mine, I think I might have added in a little bit too much, but that's only because I'm comparing it to what I can see in front of me in my pre-practices. So I might come back to that, but I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're having fun. We're just tapping away, adding in some trees, just simple blobs of green. And we'll just tuck in a few trees just in this joint here. And you can vary the opacity as well. You can just get that in a little bit of a higher percentage if you want to just kind of get rid of that kind of the dark shape of our little island. And that's the same throughout the whole of your trees. So I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to fill out the top of the head here. So maybe like one slightly larger one. I'll bring the size down again to like a 2%. I'll go beyond that shape and I'll probably just tap up here. I need to hold down on my eraser and set it to the same brush because I need to break them up. I added them in and they were two. They made a line rather than the shape that I wanted, which is this kind of idea here where they're just patches of trees. So I'm just going to zoom out, take a look at what that looks like. That looks pretty good. Happy with that so far. And everybody's just going to look different, as I always say. So make sure to tag me in your finished creations. A lot of the time you guys end up doing like something slightly different, or your approach was, just a different concept, and it looks fantastic. And I always love to see your finished creations. It's awesome. So make sure to tag me like on Instagram and Facebook. They're the best places. My Facebook group's very active, so you can always come and join that as well. That's a really cool place to share your work. Now I'm going to go up to 100% very quickly, and just on some of these trees, just tap away on that left edge, just patching like little patches of green to kind of fill out a few of them, especially over here on that left hand side. And if I can add in like little patches just to rough them up a little bit, like little taps here and there, that'll look great. A couple of little taps along that edge and so on. Now, of course, we need to add in some more trees in the center. So like a 3%. We want like a fairly large, I want like a fairly large anyway, like sort of central tree. And I want to make sure my opacity was back down to that 47% marker that we had before. So I'm just going to draw in like a really large kind of section here and kind of allude by tapping to the right hand side of the tree. And then from there, we will just draw in some more and just keep adding them in the gaps, keep tapping to create clusters of trees all the way around. Now you can obviously create large trees by grouping them together like I'm doing to create kind of like donut-like shapes. And then you can tap in the gaps to create much smaller trees. You can fill out yours however you like. So we'll keep doing that. And of course, remember, as you get further away, you want that size probably now to start thinking about getting a little bit smaller. And that's not to say that the tree necessarily needs to get smaller, but like the general sort of clump of that shape might want to start to be a little bit smaller itself. So a little something like this. Let's then tap away on this edge over here, adding in more green. Lovely stuff all the way down that left hand side. So this is a little bit of time consuming sort of part of the tutorial, but once you get something like this, you've got that lovely pattern coming in. Leave dark spaces. Do not fill out every single part of your turtle. You do not need to do that. It's then time to move into some highlights. So let's create another new layer. Let's go to our colors and grab the bottom of the third column, same column. Now, the only thing you want to do is make sure your brush size is smaller than what you were drawing on initially. So for example, like 2%, I might just about be able to keep tapping away on here to create like the light edge of some tree. Now I'm tapping and I'm pushing outwards. That's what I'm trying to do. Maybe slightly smaller. I'll go to like 2%. And don't forget to create like tiers to your trees as well. Like If it's higher, i.e. towards the center, it might be able to get a little bit more light. I'm just tapping away, creating the first little bit of detail on that first tree, and then I can just spiral that outwards from there to the outside edges of some of these trees as well. Now you don't have to do every single tree. You can add in like a little bit here. The ones over kind of this edge over here, we're not going to add in quite as much, but also we do, as always, have like one additional highlight tone to add in a second anyway. So whatever you add, you can always kind of take the focus and the lighting away from that side and push it over towards the left-hand side by adding in the brightest tones, which we'll get to in a second. So at this point, just tapping away into some of those trees, right on the edges. You want them nice and green, lovely and bright. They get loads of light all the time. Again, try and vary your brush size, but it's like a tapping motion that you're looking for. I'm going to change up my brush size shortly because I'm getting a little bit further back. I'm just creating like little random edges of trees that I'm just trying to curate in my mind. And don't forget, we're kind of looking down at it, but also like you want to kind of create top edges, like so you can add in like light on these like curves at the top of the trees. It's not just like we're not looking down at it. We're looking again with like a bit of an angle to it. So you can just round off a little bit of light on the top edge of the tree as well by creating like curved shapes. So let's add in some here. I'm going to leave a big dark patch in there, brave, and leave it. Bring the brush size down just a smidge. Don't want to go too small because then you end up really, really, really granular. And that's what we were talking about earlier, where you don't need to always do that. You can keep it kind of a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, blocky. I'm going to leave like a tree there, nice and dark. I'll add in some little bits and bobs on these ones. That's nice. And because I've got a smaller brush size than the previous one, that's why I'm going back over some of the areas I've already done, because that little bit of granule size difference between the previous taps and then these taps with this new brush size will look really, really effective, because it will give you that little bit of extra detail. So you start off with the larger one, that gives you the general shape, doesn't it? And then you can tap away, adding in lighting in these areas. Lovely. Let's keep going now. Of course, we want to outline that little bit of that shell almost, just keep that kind of shape going a little bit. We can do a few little taps over here. Again, I want to try and be consistent with the lighting as much as possible. So a few taps on the back of that tree with the smaller brush size looks really good. I can also add in like a few more up here too. They're a little bit brighter. And I might need to break up the kind of pattern a little bit, but that's something I think I could refine a little bit later on. So for now, we're just going to keep going, keep tapping away. Lovely job. Let's keep going. Nice. And then we'll move over to here as well. So these will get some lighting too. I think I need to add like a few very, very light taps on some of these trees just to give them detail, which they might be missing. That looks really good. Let's keep going. A lot brighter on the top edge, because I imagine that the light would be coming all the way across now, casting on like we did with the beach. It would be adding in some lovely bright tone here on this edge. Maybe a little random, no, let's take that off. That's fine. Down here, we've not yet done this. This is like the closest sort of bubble of land towards us pretty much. It's closer than that edge. Lots of taps, lots of scrapes. Mainly keep it on that left-hand side if you can. You'll end up with something like this. It looks really effective. And then we can just, like I said, create a new layer, change the blend mode from normal to the option of add. You may want to lower the opacity down of your brush even more, but like you can tap away. So I'm going to go like a 1%, and I'm just going to tap away in these trees here, especially the brightest ones, i.e. over here on that left-hand side. So essentially wherever you've put some green, and it's like really vibrant, like you may have tapped a few times in the same kind of spots, you can just tap away at even more, adding in even more brightness to these edges. And again, you can always tone the add layer down in terms of just bring the opacity down of it. If things start to look like a bit overdone, a bit too bright, just tone it down. So I'm tapping away. Definitely need to get some on this like arm up here. I'm going to make the brush size a smidge bigger. Apologies as well if the camera has been wobbly at all. I can't tell if it has been, but you definitely will be able to tell. because it's all that tapping and pushing into the screen to layer in that color. Lovely, a little bit brighter up here. I'm going to identify like a tree here as well, maybe like lots and lots of taps and like a, just go round and round and round. Round and round and round. And it's not to say just occasionally, you can't just add like a little bit of a, oh, we don't want a line though, do we? You can tap a few times just to add in like the edge of a tree. Add in some more here. Lovely. Now, if your hand's not getting cramp yet, congratulations, but mine definitely is. So we're almost there. That looks really good. Let's add in some shadows now. So let's go ahead and we want to work underneath there, underneath the tree line. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down. So we've got the add layer, the light layer, and then the darker greens. And then we want to be underneath it and create a new layer. Go to your colors, grab this color here, top of the fourth column. Let's let that brush size go up to like a 3% and just kind of wrap around the right side, pushing a shadow around. It's a lovely blue tone. Just wrapping that around. Light's coming left to right. You could probably make it like a little bit more downwards, perhaps. You know, you could like wrap that underneath. In dark areas, don't be afraid to really chuck in the lighting. Here, I'm going to go round the edge, wiggle my pen. You're on top of the beach as well, of course, so you will lose a little bit of your highlights. 3%, just going to go ahead and just wiggle pretty much all the way down this edge. And if I wiggle, I'll create random shapes, which will kind of maybe hopefully mirror like a random tree here and there or something, which could look quite nice. Darken up under there too. A little bit on that rear side, a little bit in kind of here, so I can push from left to right, just kind of pushing in a little bit of a shadow in there. And that should hopefully start to tie in a little bit more of that kind of light tone. Now, let's go ahead then and add in some waves to the ocean. So I'm going to go right to the top of the layers and create a new layer. Go to my colors and grab the bottom here of the bottom of the second column from the right. Your size wants to be quite small, like a 1%. Your opacity may need to change in a minute. And you just want to kind of wiggle your pen along kind of the coast, around that kind of sand here and there, and build up kind of like a white-ish kind of outline, and then just like a few taps away from it. We are going to introduce another brush in a second, but we just want to kind of build up little kind of wavy kind of white areas. So I'm going to bring my opacity up. I'm going to bring it up to like a 70%. I'm just going to wiggle my pen along the beach edge almost, just to kind of create like waves, that kind of wave, little crashes here and there along the coast. So just make your way all the way down. Keep tapping away even in your lines just to create variety in the color, so the amount of color. Just making sure that you can add in like just like light tone, a little bit of light tone here and there, and then also some super vibrant whitish tones as well. That'll just give you some lovely detail. Also, this kind of takes up a little bit of space between your beach and the tropical tone of the water. So this will just give you that lovely little bit of color. Now, as I can now see, as I'm working my way through here, I can see that I actually didn't add any color onto my little islands of sand. So I'm going to do that very quickly and come back to you in just a sec. Okay, so they're now done as well. So they now nicely marry up as well. And we're just going to run some white tone around them as well. Again, little wiggles and waves into the water. Again, as I said, we are going to introduce in a minute like another brush just to add in, or help us add in some more detail in the water here. Now, if you've got like a little island like me as well, you want to run around the edge of it, just like, because it's probably protecting. Now, in hindsight, I wouldn't have made it this shape. I would have made it horizontal because this is a bit of a quirky kind of shape, to be honest with you, to add in the kind of white lines too. But either way, we'll make it work. And we just keep going. Let's keep going all the way around the coast. So some waves, wiggle them across each other, just create lots of breaks in the water. Leave gaps though. You don't have to have your whole entire coast like covered in white lines here for the waves. Now you can have gaps in there. I want it to be a little bit more vibrant, maybe it towards the bottom. A wiggle of color here. That's a very long line. I would avoid doing that if you can, because that's just huge wave otherwise. It doesn't really make too much sense. So I've broken it up now into multiple little waves instead. And I'll just wiggle my pen along there, try and create some variation between all that kind of white that I'm adding in here along the edge. We'll just keep zooming out. Maybe I could go a bit smaller, to be honest with you, and maybe just kind of take my time a bit more. I think for tutorial's sake, sometimes I end up having to just like get through it in a way, but I'd probably refine this afterwards. It's one of those things that I would definitely try and touch up once the tutorial's over, maybe, and you're just completely free to analyze. It's the hardest thing when you do these tutorials is taking a look at it yourself. When you do these, you can take a break and come back to it. You can see it the next day and it doesn't matter. Whereas for me, I've got to keep doing it in the recording. So, you know, I never come back to a recording. It's not efficient and not the right way to do it either. It's got to get done, and then we get it up for you to do. So yeah, a little kind of it'd be nice to tuck back into here, tidy up a few little bits. I very rarely do it, to be honest with you, but this one I think definitely could just do with like a little bit here and there. So just carrying on around that edge. I think for now I'm going to leave it with how it is for a minute, because I can go to my brush, scroll down and use the dry brush. I've got the size set to 4%, maximum opacity. If you do lots of little streaks, you'll see it will just add in little waves here and there. So you can go along those edges of what you've already done and kind of blend this into it, and it will just help kind of maybe get rid of a few little lines here and there. It may add some additional ones that will look really effective. Don't be afraid to also use it slightly further out in the body of the water as well. We're going to also make sure we add it in almost everywhere, because this can really help us now show that it's ocean, even though we know it is. You know, based off the fact we know it's an island, you can blatantly tell. If you just give it like some light squiggles and wiggles here and there, all the way in this kind of null void space, it will add in like what looks like just very minimal amounts of wave. And then you can press a bit firmer, like towards the coast, like where you've added in your white lines already, you know, just to kind of bulk them out. And then in other areas, you can press really lightly, get a slightly different finish to it. As long as you keep a little bit of that kind of horizontal look to it, it should look pretty good. And again, just wiggle your way all the way around your scene, because it will just add in little waves, little breakups, little bits of detail all the way along that top edge as well. A little bit out here. That's really nice, especially when you like have like a random patch of like the wave in the kind of gaps in the distance. You can also use it to kind of cover up like little edges of some of those like tropical bits of water that we added in earlier. Now the next stage is to add in some clouds, and we're going to do this by creating a new layer right at the very top. Your color wants to be set to the bottom of the second column from the right. Same brushes we've been using. I've got it set to the 8% size, same opacity as we had before. You just then want to start creating some clouds. Now bear in mind, you don't want to interfere with your design too much, but we do want to have this kind of nice overlap of these like aerial items. So look how patchy I'm making this. It's just a cloud way up in the sky up here. I'm going to start by adding in one like down here, and I just want to kind of cover over the corner there a little bit, and then also go into the corner down here too. And you can see I'm just patching it in. I'm not overthinking it or over designing it, to be honest with you. Then I'll try my best to keep the brush size as big as possible. I'll go to the 8, we'll just try. And we'll patch in like another one just over here, off to the edge of the canvas, will look fine. A couple of little patches there. You do want to have a little bit of kind of cover up of your design, but just so that it's kind of peeking through. So like over here, I'll add one, and I'll make it kind of a bit more kind of horizontal, coming in from the side. So I've got something like this. Maybe I could add in like a little patch of cloud like here too. Then you want to go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, left to right to around about 10%, and then you can tap away. Now, what you want to do is you then want to sort of bring this down to like a 57%, something around about there. You can then go ahead and sort of swipe this to the left and duplicate it, bring it back up to 90 or max even 97, something like that. But grab your cursor and just flip it vertically, flip it horizontal, and just see what it looks like. It might be too much. It might be too white already. So what you then want to do is in fact go, well, we'll delete that and we'll just create a new layer and do it manually. So that's just an approach you can do. Bearing in mind that we already know that that looked quite heavy, you don't want to add in too much. So we'll go back to that 8% brush size over this cloud. I'm going to add in patches of variety and try not to interfere, shall I say, with my design too much. Now I know what that will look like if it's blurred. I can just go, right, okay, well, I'll add it in lightly here and there, a couple of little patches, and that's going to be around about it. I don't want to get in the way too much, but at the same time, I do want those clouds to have some nice sort of change up in volume, etc. I'll go a bit smaller down here, and then I'll try and sort of purposefully create like little tiers of cloud here in this bottom right corner. Leave some gaps. You don't have to fill out the entirety of the cloud. If you've already added in too much, just hold down your eraser. Set that brush size to like a 4% and just chop away into the white tones that you've just added in. And that may even look quite nice because you end up with random patches that you never could have drawn initially because you're hacking away into it, which will give you these lovely kind of wispy shapes in between the big blobs. So like a little something like this perhaps. And again, adjustments, Gaussian blur, left to right up to around about that 10% mark, and then tap on your adjustments when you're done. You should end up with these lovely wispy clouds which we can see through. Now, you will need to make the decision on your previous set of clouds. Do you need to lower the opacity or raise it? It's totally up to you. I added in quite a lot of color on that first run. So I think around about that kind of 33% for me on that just gives it a little bit of a light tone to it. I can see through it enough, and it's not taking away from the details and the overall design of our little island. But that's totally up to you. You may even want to go to adjustments and blur it out even further. So like just blur them a bit more. So I'm going to do another 10%. And then that way they're nice and soft. If I turn them off, for example, you can see. And then I've got my more sort of defined clouds towards the top. And again, just vary these as you wish. You know, maybe just bring them down a little bit, 85% perhaps. Something around about that kind of look. You just want that like we're peering just a little bit through our clouds. Now, what you can also do is you swipe from left to right on both. Grab your cursor and just give it a little bit of perspective using distort by dragging out the bottom right node and the bottom left node. This is completely optional. And then just bear in mind, some of your design was on the very edge of your canvas. So you might not need to, or you might not even be able to do this. So I can see I've got some clouds up there, but what I'm trying to do is just kind of just create larger scale at the bottom and shrink the scale down in the distance. Take your time. This is something you can do. You don't have to do it. You can even use something like warp if you want to kind of maybe bring that down. But again, bear in mind that the clouds that I've got, mine were right on the edge of the screen. So I might have to kind of bring them in a little bit like that if I wanted to. I'm going to undo the warp part of that. And I'm going to go back to the distort that was a little bit narrower like that and tap on my cursor when I'm done. Because that gives me these nice flatter look to them. Or undo it, take a look at what you liked before. So I'm going to just mess around again, a little bit of distort. Seen the two different options just a little bit, looks really nice. I'll tap on my cursor when I'm done. I'm really happy with how that looks. I'm going to pinch with two fingers, go full screen with 4, and we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations wherever you decide to share them, like Instagram and Facebook. As always, make sure to check out my Patreon because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters, and that catalogue now sits over 150 exclusive Patreon tutorials at the time of recording. And again, with 3 added every single month, that just continues to grow and grow. So make sure to check out the catalogue and use the link in the description to see every single design before you join. And if you like this tutorial here on YouTube, you'll love this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.